Stas23 here. In today's knife therapy, I have my top 10 most disappointing knife purchases. If you own one of these knives and you like it, that's cool. They're just, for me, the most disappointing. But let's get started. First up, we have the DPX Gear Hest. Boy, this knife was probably the most disappointing of all of them because this was my first like higher end knife at the time. These were more expensive than they are now. Well, if they were available now. I saw it on Blade HQ for $175. I think I paid $2 something whenever they first came out. And it's just a hunk of junk, I'll be honest. But what drew me to it is I love the aesthetics of it. It was comfortable in hand. And this was when the hard use overbuilt phase was going strong in the community. It's kind of coming back a little bit, but it just, I don't know, the way they marketed it, I thought it was just hard use beast and just the opposite. The knife was made for DPX by Lionsteel, and no one would know now. I probably wouldn't have bought it back then, but hindsight, you know, what can you do? But first off, the gimmicky features on the knife, you know, are something now I know that I usually steer clear of. This is their roto lock where you turn this and it turns it into a fixed blade. No, that's not the case. What I noticed is when using it or sometimes in the pocket, this thing would get turned to the lock position and would cause issues. So now I have it tight, and red thread locker because I don't want it to turn at all because it can be aggravating. And this right here, the wire strippers, I tried it. I didn't find it worked at all. Pretty much a gimmick and then a bottle opener, really. But those aren't the worst things about the knife. The next thing is I mean, I can't really fault it because, you know, they're going for that hard use. But this D2 steel at $100+ is ridiculously thick behind the edge. 33 thousandths behind the edge, and this one's sharpened at 24 degrees per side. And I think I reprofiled it. It's a terrible cutter. The steel's super soft. Lionsteel is known for that, or they were at least whenever they made this. I don't know about now. And the biggest disappointment with this knife, and let's see if you can hear it. Okay, that's not that bad right now, but it has up and down lock rock. It's because this titanium lock face is raw titanium. When I say it is soft, I bent this over about a month ago. There's the lockup right here. I bent it over as far as I could get it over. It's just hard to move this, and it still has up and down play. Before I did that, I could rattle this thing like crazy, and I didn't use this knife hard or anything. That's just opening and closing it. It developed lock rock probably 3 months in. And yeah, I know a lot of these I should have sent them in for warranty and stuff like that, but it's a used knife and it's a little late for that. You know, I probably could now, but they're not going to fix this. Now, since I bent this over, I have carbonized the lock face a few times, and as soft as this titanium is, even with the hard tungsten carbide layer on top of that, it still deforms the top of that titanium lock face. That is pretty impressive for a hard-to-use knife. The ergos are pretty decent on it. It's riding on Teflon, and now I have so much lock bar pressure to try to keep it from having lock rock that it's decently smooth. Let's see, I can almost flick it out. Let's see. Yeah, give it a good one. I could flick it out. You could wave it on your pocket with this, but at the price point, this I would definitely steer clear of the DPX Gear Hest. Now, I don't know anything about the newer ones. This one was when they first came out. Maybe they got better. Hopefully they did. I'm not trying to trash on any company. I'm just telling you my experience on a certain knife. Number 2, we have the Boker Plus Falcon 2.0. I picked this up. I thought it was an interesting looking blade. I think I paid like 80 something bucks for it. And the first problem I had with this was it was misfiring. Let's probably won't be able to get to it now. It does come out decently hard. It kind of feels like a Lightning OTF if you ever had one of those. About the same build quality. The misfiring gets aggravating. It had a burnt tip on it. I've stropped it out pretty much, so it wasn't terrible. Let's see, you might be able to see a little bit of it right there. And this edge bevel is probably one of the thickest edge bevels I've seen on a knife. I think it's like 36 degrees behind the edge. That's a thick boy. And the edge bevel is more than 27 degrees per side. I don't remember exactly what it is. The pocket clip is a hot spot for me. It's just an uncomfortable, clunky knife, and I definitely would waste some more money on it. Number 3, we have the Civivi Knives Seitos. This knife caught my eye. I love the overall aesthetics. I absolutely love the blade shape. I don't mind this burlap micarta. It's got contoured scales. But then they bead blasted the blade, which I hate bead blast. It gets smudgy. It's prone to corrosion. And on top of that, it's not the best slicer because they went with a flat grind instead of a hollow grind here. So it's pretty thick behind the edge. And they put a steel frame lock. Now, I put this milled titanium aftermarket Civivi titanium clip. It's kind of been probably not the best clip for this. The clip was okay. It was just a stainless steel bent clip. But the frame lock, the steel frame lock, I don't like that. You usually see that on cheap knives. And also the last thing that I didn't like was the poor lock bar access. It's pretty much the same height as the show side scale. There's not much room to get in there, and it's a little bit slick. It's not the easiest to get your thumb in there. And I also had to bend the lock bar over to give it a little bit better of a detent because the action wasn't the best. So definitely one that bummed me out. I still carry it from time to time. Just wish it was a little bit thinner or hollow ground here, and just do away with the steel frame lock and the bead blast all over. I hate the bead blast. It's like such a cheap looking finish. Number 4, we have the WE Knives Press Check. First off, this is an Alan Lishwitz design, and I love his design language. I just think it really appeals to me. I saw this one at Blade Show, and I love the look of it. I ended up not buying it, but I couldn't remember why I didn't buy it. I probably should have wrote a note down. But first thing that I couldn't stand is the bead blast, because I did have corrosion all in the fuller rather quickly. I carried it one day out in the summertime and even had EDCI on it, and it had rust spots in there. At this price point, this is a $240 knife. Why put a bead blast? To me, that is just cheapening out. I like the different look here. Some people don't. I like the way they did this little cutout for the bolsters. I think it looks nice. That pop of color with the layered G10 and the pivot collar, all that looks nice. Love the harpoon blade shape. It slices well, 20 CV blade steel. The thing that probably is the biggest deal breaker for me are the ergos. You got this flipper tab that comes up right there creating a guard, and then this comes up, so it's forcing you into this one spot. I have a medium-sized hand, and I can barely get a 4-finger grip in there comfortably, but this little corner right there digs into my finger and is very uncomfortable. So for me, that if a knife's not comfortable to use, it's gonna not really get carried. I do love the action. It's got a very snappy action, comfortable flipper tab. It's just a shame that some of those things just kill it for me. Number 5, we have the Spartan Blades Talos, and I know I said the DPX Gear Hest was my biggest disappointment, but I would have to give that to the Spartan Blades Talos. First of all, because I love Spartan Blades. They're a U.S. company. They decided to do some overseas produced knives, which I'm fine with. It can get more of their knives into people's hands that couldn't afford their more premium knives. But this knife, in my opinion, was an absolute fail. Now, I do get it. This was their first run of these knives, so they're going to have hiccups. But this is actually my second Talos. The first one I had all kinds of issues. I returned it, and then they sent me this one. So at first, I was okay with it. I love the aesthetics. I love the size of it. It's just an excellent blade shape. They got a nice, attractive stone wash on there. I love CTS XHP steel. Then we get to the blade grind. This is a smaller knife. You know, you would think, being that it's a smaller knife, this is not a hard-use knife. This thing's 29 thousandths behind the edge. So nice and thick. So it's not the best slicer. But that's not a deal breaker for me. I can thin that edge out and make it, you know, make it usable. Second, whenever I was using this in the testing, this lock bar, as you can see, it sticks up past the scales and it's jimped right there. So that's a hot spot for me whenever I'm pushing into stuff. Not the most comfortable, but that's still not the worst part about this one. You'll better hear this. Yeah, it's got pretty severe up and down lock rock. I've even bent the lock bar, as you can see. It's got late lockup, still has lock rock. I would have to either get a bigger stop pin to cant the blade forward a little bit, but I'm not gonna do all that. You know, it still locks up. It's not failing, but that's pretty bad. So I use it as a beater knife. The XHP does get super, super sharp. And hopefully, you know, after the first run of these, hopefully they've got it under control. And hopefully in the comments I'll see, you know, people talking about theirs is great. I just wish, you know, I wish I could have got a good one. Especially since these, I think whenever they first came out, were like $125. They're now on sale for $95, probably because of stuff like that. But at $125, I think that is definitely, it's unacceptable for any knife. Number 6, we have the AM8 Knives Flix. I think this is a beautiful, beautiful knife. I love that blade shape. The handle materials and the way they did this look very nice. You have that marble carbon fiber. Love the milling on the titanium bolster. I think it looks nice. This is a very, very comfortable handle. The scales are contoured. They're a little bit thicker. Very comfortable here and in that choke up. That's one thing that I loved about this knife during testing, how comfortable it was in the hand. The action on it's pretty darn smooth. The lock bar access is really good on this one and comfortable. But this is a dedicated front flipper and you have a little window right there to reverse flick it. But, you know, they advertise it as a front flipper. But the peaks of that jimping are rounded over. Hopefully you can see that. And it's rather slick. On top of that, the detent is pretty strong on my particular knife. I don't know if it was like that. I know some people had great detents, so maybe it's just my knife. But I can do it. It's not the most comfortable, and I don't do it all the time. I got to really be thinking about it right now. I'm pushing hard down on it, and I'm able to get it. But if I'm not really paying attention, I do it. My finger drags across that. My hands are already beat up enough. I don't need it to be beat up on this. And then being that the detent is pretty strong, it takes a lot of pressure to reverse flick it. And the window of this thing right here, kind of like on the Vero knives, is got a chamfer around it. So it's kind of slick. So I slip off on it quite often. Now, this is a $196 knife, so all those problems definitely shouldn't be there. And this is probably my biggest pet peeve, something that it just irks me, especially on an expensive knife like this. Hopefully you can see that, but I've sharpened this, but above this, you can see that discoloration line. That's where they hit it with a power strop, like a buffing wheel or a leather wheel or something like that, with dropping compound, and it's like they did the grind on it, then they polished it so it tried to do a like mirror polish on it, and this gives you a very cloudy look into the finish right above that bevel. Don't know if it's coming out, but something that just really irks me. So I don't know. I wanted to love the knife a lot, but just too many problems. Number 7, we have the Gerber Slimsada. I'm always rooting for our U.S. companies, and when I saw this, I thought it looked nice, but I was crossing my fingers that Gerber might have done something right, but it's a hot mess. The one positive things are I love the aesthetics. The blade's nice and slicey. It's not the thinnest behind the edge, but it has a thin edge bevel, and it came ridiculously sharp, and it holds a pretty good edge. I don't love the micarta, but it's okay. But what kind of ruins it for me is the steel lock. The steel frame lock is giving it extra heft when it should be, it's a slim knife. They tapped the screws into the stainless steel. This right here is a $53 knife. There's a lot of $53 knives that are far better than this one. I could have handled the steel frame lock, but the lock bar access, they cut this part out. But look how thin that is on that lock, and that lock bar has a lot of pressure. It's very uncomfortable for me to push that lock bar over. Even when I try to use that fat of my thumb, it's nice and uncomfortable. Also, the blade hole is pretty darn sharp, so if I don't reverse flick it, it's not the most comfortable. It kind of tears up my finger, like it puts that line in my finger. And lastly, the pocket clip is so tight, sitting right there in that lock bar. When I put this in my pocket, I struggle to get it out. I pull half my pocket up whenever I try to get this out of the pocket. Also, it came super off-centered, and you would think that, no, that's right, it's the heavy pressure in the lock bar is pushing. Now, you would think it'd be pushing to this side, so I don't know what's going on there. But, for now, I got to give up on them. Number 8, we have the Miguron Vaso. Alrighty, I bought this one because I love the slim and sleek form factor. Thought it'd be a great, like gents carry knife, or just one to carry in basketball shorts or something. Very streamlined because it has a front flipper design, micarta. It's got these deep chamfers that give it that contoured effect. Polished stainless steel liners. And it's got a nice milled titanium pocket clip. For 40 bucks, the milled titanium pocket clip, that you don't see that. So I wanted to give it a shot. And it's got this beautiful crown spine. But that's where it stops for me. The edge bevel on this thing is extremely thick. 28 thousandths behind the edge, and the actual edge bevel was so messed up. One side was like 30 degrees and the other side was like 28 degrees. I fixed it, and I did get it nice and sharp, but it took a while. It took a while to fix those edge bevels. I've heard they're doing a better job now, so that's a positive. This was in that DC 53 steel or whatever. It didn't blow me away. It was okay. Kind of reminded me of D2. And, but the deal breakers for me on this one, besides the thick bevel, this is a front flipper. And you see how they crowned this and made it all like nice and polished. Well, they did that with that flipper. You have very rounded over, jumps up there, and it's like polished or buffed, so it's nice and slick. Another one that I really have to push down on and be deliberate for me to flip it. It can be done, but it's not the easiest. I wish more companies would just do fine jimping, make it close, kind of like Riyadh does. It really grips onto that finger, makes it very easy. You don't have to think about it. And then the next thing is the lock bar access is terrible. It's flush with the show side scale. They don't have much room in there. I can push my fat of my thumb in there to move it. It does have a smooth action, but, look, there we go. Slipping, never fun. I hate poor lock bar access, and super thick knives that just don't make sense because it's a, slim EDC. They should have put a nice hollow grind on there and made it a good little cutter. Number 9, we have the Lionsteel and Collector Knives collaboration round head. I thought this was a absolutely beautiful knife whenever I picked it up. I love that pin-shaped blade, spear point blade, whatever you want to call it, drop point. An M390, but I should have stopped when I saw the Lionsteel, especially when this one came out. It has decent fit and finish. They, you know, a lot of, even though I love crown spines, when you see that on a slip joint, the crowned spine, crown liners, crown blade, that's because it allows them to be sloppy on their tolerances for matching up everything, because it gives you the illusion that it's matched up perfectly. Secondly, you know, it's got a pretty weak pull and walk and chalk on it. It's got a decent half stop. It's just kind of sloppy. But the deal breaker for me on this one is this has got to be one of the softest M390 blades I have in my collection. I've sharpened this. You can see how wide that bevel is. I've sharpened this thing. You can see it going up on there. I sharpened probably 7 times. Doesn't hold an edge. It's if I had to take a wild guess, it's probably in the low 50s. That's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous, especially for a $233 knife. Makes absolutely no sense. That's why I love the Jack Wolf knife so much. They're a little bit more, but the fit and finish is off the charts better than this. And it holds a great edge. And it's super slicey. This thing's thick behind the edge. This one's just a disappointment all over the place. Number 10, we have the Summit Knife Co. Half Dome. I don't even know if this company is around anymore, but this was their first design. I picked it up because I thought it was cool, interesting looking. It's different, and different's good. You know, I like different. There's so many knives that look exactly alike. I love the green micarta. Absolutely beautiful there. It's a titanium frame lock. I put this aftermarket Lynch clip on here, and I'll tell you why in a second. But first off, it had terrible, terrible edge termination. I cut a little bitty slot in there. That was just a really rudimentary because I don't use this knife that often. So I just wanted to be able to sharpen it all the way to the back without, you know, having a recurve back here. So I just cut a little small notch. You can see some of that thickness left over in the back right here. It's made by Fox Knives. And, you know, I find a lot of the Italian companies, their steel's soft. I like Mucci, I can't say it right now, guy. He designed some pretty cool knives. And, you know, the overall, like, shape of that blade, putting that finger up there if you're doing, you know, some delicate style things, I think it's great. But let me just go over some of the downfalls of the knife. Once again, this blade hole's really sharp. Every time I flick it or roll it open, it pulls skin off or fingernail off. Never fun to open. And the pocket clip that came on here, being that it's up so high, whenever I'd use this knife, gave me the worst hot spot. It was hot spot city. The design of the scales are okay. This wraps right here, this goes here, but this finger kind of hits right there. That alone's not that comfortable, but not as bad as the pocket clip was for my hands. And probably the biggest thing for this knife, deal breaker for me, is the lock bar access. Okay, you have the flush scales, then they put jimping on here. Okay, very uncomfortable jimping, and it's not that easy to push this knife over. So it hurts. It hurts my hand so bad to disengage that lock bar. And I really got to bury my thumb in there. And it's very uncomfortable right there. So definitely steer clear of this one. Especially this was a $125 knife. I think it was even more whenever they first came out. You know, those type of things in the R&D process. You got to be looking at some of those things. Carry the knife. It feels like they didn't use it. Because those things would probably bother the heck out of them. I'm not sure why they did it. But there you go. Oh, yeah, before I let you go, even though I trashed on the DPX Hest, I do have this Hest Urban made by Florian. This is a USA company. Terrible edge termination, but I actually like this one. It's on bearings. It's a decent little knife. I would have... if I wouldn't have this one, I probably would have got one of the USA made ones by Southern Grind. Those are pretty nice as well. This is the smaller Urban. If you don't know, this is the Hest. This is the Hest Urban. So, trying to bring some light to it. So, if you have any questions about anything in particular, let me know. If you have any knives that, you know, were super disappointing for you that you purchased, let me know down in the comments. You know, it kind of helps other people out. Now, if one of these is like your favorite knife ever, or you're wanting to get it so bad, watch other people's reviews on the knife and see if they have some of the same issues. Maybe, you know, some of the issues are just, you know, something that just bothers me really bad. So don't not buy a knife just because I hate a lot of things about it. You know, like this one. I know that one's a really popular knife, and maybe I just got a bad one. But, you know, I'm not the only one that said that. But, you know, if none of those things are deal breakers for you, then give it a shot. So there you go. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, please leave them down below. I hope everybody's having an absolute amazing day. I will see you on the next one. Peace.